The lawyer for Adriana's family is questioning the quality of the investigation done by the Canadian investigator, Mr. Leonard McCushion. We're going to discuss more in a moment. We're glad you joined us today on The Final Takeaway. Here we dive deep into current events as well as social, cultural, political, economic, legal, and geopolitical issues affecting the people. Our content seeks to encourage critical thinking and informed discussions on topics important to the public. Adriana Younge's family attorney Dexter Todd has taken issue with the investigation into the girl's passing for a variety of reasons. After considering different factors, Todd questions the competency of the investigative team. Todd expressed his concerns a day before the Guyana Police Force disclosed the findings of an investigation conducted by the Canadian investigator. Leonard McCushion, a retired homicide and suspicious death investigator from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, was asked to join the investigative team by Guyanese authorities. Don't go anywhere until you hear from Attorney Todd himself. And by the way, I invite you to follow us on Facebook and turn on YouTube notifications to keep up to date. See the links below to all our social media platforms. We appreciate your support. Now that we have that squared away, let's get back to why we're here. After spending approximately 1 week in Guyana reviewing Adriana Younge's case, retired Canadian investigator Leonard McCushion determined that, quote, no evidence of foul play was involved in the young girl's death. And as I've said before, Attorney Todd has taken issue with some of the findings. Let's listen.
I've read a lot of information in the press in relation to the expert or the investigator has found no evidence. And I'm saying, when did that become a new order of the laws in Guyana in relation to someone saying, we found no evidence? I remind the authorities that the only authority on the law to determine what is evidence is the court of law. The police gather information. They submit to the Director of Public Prosecutions for assessment. The Director of Public Prosecution goes through the assessment to determine whether there is enough to prefer a charge before a court of law, but not to determine what is evidence or not. This is a process of gathering information. And so I see no reason or any law that will allow the police not to accept the information.
The release of the investigation report shortly before Adriana's second autopsy has raised eyebrows. This has been interpreted as a clever chess move intended to signal that the investigation is closed. Doing so potentially bars the presentation of new findings from the second autopsy. Speaking passionately on this point, Todd had this to say.
It is not for the police to reject anything at this stage and to say that we have closed investigations and we will not accept information coming now. The police, they have an obligation under the law to investigate and not to refuse any information in the investigative process. I believe it's in the public's domain by now that a review or a second autopsy is going to be conducted. And that also is information that the police, of course, must take into consideration.
McCushion's case review followed the first autopsy. The forensic pathologist who performed the postmortem procedure ruled drowning as the cause of death. A family doctor who witnessed the autopsy reported that the pathologist could not determine the manner of death or estimate the time of death. Suspecting homicide and lacking key details about how the drowning took place and the time of death, the family called for an extensive investigation. Adhering to the family's request, the Guyana government enlisted the assistance of Investigator McCushion. He received a lukewarm welcome, if any at all, from the family. At that point, they had lost trust in public officials who vowed to scorch the earth to find out the true cause of the girl's demise. Days later, we learned that the investigator completed his investigation or review of the case and had departed Guyana. About a week later, the local authorities announced that McCushion found, quote, no evidence of foul play. But Attorney Todd is not impressed. Let's take a listen.
I can say to you clearly that this investigation was wrapped up by this Canadian investigator in days. And I can tell you, in that short time, if he had to review the statements and, of course, work done by the Guyana Police Force investigators in this matter, then I'm telling you, he has reviewed nothing. Because they are not competent to do the investigation. Not competent to do the investigation. And clearly, he could not have walked through this investigation from start to ending without in such a short time.
Todd, who is a former policeman, said, due to the complexity of the case, it would be challenging for any investigator to review statements and evidence in such a short time frame.
The complexity of this investigation will not allow any person reviewing this matter in days to review statements. Because the first thing you've had to do, you've had to get, of course, a digital forensic expert to be able to bring together back all those videos, persons who have put in videos, because what you needed to do was to recreate the scene. You had to recreate the scene because the entire scene was destroyed by fire.
This required a thorough investigation by a team of experts since, according to Todd, the police were not competent to conduct the investigation. With the exception of McCushion, Todd disclosed that police were tight-lipped on the names of those on the investigative team. It was by accident that he discovered that Adriana's father, Sir Brian Younge, had not been questioned by the police. The father is the individual who plunged into the pool and retrieved his daughter, as we watch, mortified at the scene that unfolded before our eyes on April 24th, 2025. The secrecy around the investigation and the child's autopsy report raised eyebrows in a crucial investigation of this nature that requires a high level of transparency and ethics. In fact, the family was not provided with a copy of the autopsy report or the results of the forensic tests. All of this only created more suspicions or added fuel to the fire, as we would say. But let's rewind to April 23rd, 2025 and be reminded of the police's conduct when Adriana was reported missing. From the moment the local police released misleading information on Adriana's disappearance, they lost the family's and the public's trust in this case. They lost integrity in the eyes of the Guyanese public, both local and overseas. So much so, the family refused to allow the authorities to be the custodian of the remains. On April 23, 2025, Adriana visited the Doubleday Hotel with family members for recreational purposes. Persons present stated that she was last seen wading in the hotel's swimming pool. Her grandmother told the press she last saw the girl standing on the other end of the pool from where she was. Even though the recounts may vary from one person to the other, one thing remains a fact. This little girl, 11 years old, did not go home on that day. Instead, she went to the morgue the next day after her father recovered her from the same swimming pool. A second autopsy was conducted in Georgia last week by Dr. Carol Terry, the chief medical examiner of Gwinnett County, Georgia. You can check out the 2 videos we've released on the autopsy on the second autopsy that was done in Georgia. Unlike the team of 3 pathologists who conducted the first autopsy, Dr. Terry, the second forensic examiner, stopped short of ruling drowning as the cause of death. Do tell us what you think in a comment section about all of this as it plays out right before our very eyes. There are people who were there at the time when Adriana went missing and when she was recovered. They have different recounts of what transpired, what they saw, and have taken issue with the fact that the reports coming out of Guyana is trying to sell a different narrative. That's all we have for now. I hope you've turned on YouTube notifications to catch the latest from this channel. Thanks for watching as always. Stay safe.